everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. I'm Chanel Call, and here's a look at the top stories we're following right now. A desperate search for answers this morning after dozens were killed in a fiery plane crash in Kazakhstan. What we know about the jet's final moments, plus the mystery surrounding the crash. More travel headaches could be on the way as powerful storms brew in different parts of the country. The area is facing the biggest threat that's ahead in our forecast. And Cowboy Carter stole the show on Christmas. We'll recap Beyonce's hometown performance and the NFL's holiday games. Our top story this hour, investigators are looking into whether Russian anti-aircraft defenses may have played a role in the deadly plane crash in Kazakhstan. At least 38 people are dead. Right now, the number of survivors stands at 67. But many questions still remain about why the plane was diverted and what led to this emergency situation. The plane was flying from Azerbaijan to Russia when it was diverted and crashed in Kazakhstan on the shore of the Caspian Sea. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay has more.
Well, there are indeed new developments in the plane crash in Kazakhstan as investigators now suspect Russian anti-aircraft defenses may have been involved. This theory emerged after radar data revealed missile activity in the area at the time of the crash. While Russia has yet to comment, aviation experts say this could point to a misfire. Authorities in Kazakhstan are working with Russian investigators, but tensions are rising over who will lead that inquiry. The Embraer 190 jet went down on Christmas Day just off the Caspian Sea in Kazakhstan. Rescuers described a chaotic scene as they pulled survivors from the wreckage, some of them missing their shoes. The jet split in half and flipped upside down, laid scattered across the ground with debris and casualties stretching for hundreds of feet in this remote part of Central Asia. Meanwhile, search teams have recovered critical components of the aircraft, including the black boxes, which are expected to provide more answers in the coming days. Now, the model of jet, the ERJ 190, is made by a Brazilian company. JetBlue is the biggest American company that uses this model, but it had already said it was planning on retiring this model of jet next year. Back to you.
Chris Livesay, thank you. 4 people are injured after a fight at an Arizona airport on Christmas night. Police say a family got into an argument and it escalated at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. 3 people were shot and 1 person was stabbed. The violent incident sparked rumors of an active shooter, which investigators later confirmed was not accurate.
A group of known individuals engaged in a physical altercation that took place here at the outside a restaurant. The altercation escalated when somebody produced a handgun. I am aware that there was a secondary incident that occurred at the airport, completely unrelated to this. From my understanding, that incident was this man received a text message that he believed there was an active shooter at Sky Harbor. This was not an active shooter, that never was.
And police say that man came to the airport with a gun after hearing the rumors and got into an altercation with police. That suspect will soon face charges, but no one involved in the initial incident has yet been charged. Police in Hawaii are investigating the discovery of a body in the wheel well of a United Airlines plane. The body was found in one of the main landing gears when the plane arrived on Maui after taking off from Chicago on Tuesday. United says the wheel well is only accessible from the outside. It's unclear when or how the person was able to get into the landing gear of the Boeing 787. Severe storms are set to pick up in Texas this afternoon, potentially causing some major travel delays. Here's a look at the radar now, where severe weather will be seen from Dallas all the way to Houston before moving east into Louisiana and Arkansas tonight. These storms could bring with it isolated tornadoes, damaging winds, and a threat of large hail. A Christmas Eve snowmobile trip in Utah turned into a desperate rescue mission for 2 brothers when one was caught in an avalanche. Braden Hansen says his brother Hunter was buried by the snow with only the tips of his fingers visible. He was able to locate and dig him out, with Hunter suffering only minor injuries, the family calling this a Christmas miracle. And just days after pounding surf caused part of a wharf to collapse in central California, another storm with powerful waves is taking aim at the coast. CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore is following the latest on all of this today. Hey, Grant, what are you watching for here?
Hey, good morning, Janelle. Watching several things across the country today. You mentioned the severe weather that we're expecting across the central and southern plains later on today, but it really is going to be the West Coast that is going to endure several rounds of these atmospheric rivers and these storms that will be battering the coast, really from Northern California all the way up into the Pacific Northwest. It's going to be brutal as we track several rounds of heavy rain, gusty winds, and high elevation snow, and it's because of, like I said, this atmospheric river that's just taking all of this Pacific moisture and just funneling it right into the West Coast. Ongoing storm right now in the Pac Northwest, but we'll see another round of storms arrive as we go through the overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. There you see the high elevation snow across the northern Rockies and then up into the Pacific Northwest, places like Seattle seeing very heavy rainfall this morning. So powerful winds, that's going to be another concern, potentially gusts up to 80 miles per hour. We're going to see some rough surf and high waves, maybe even waves up to 30 feet. And then, of course, the heavy rainfall and that high elevation snow. There you see the storm system arriving as we go into early tomorrow morning. A little break as we go into midday tomorrow before the next wave of moisture arrives along the Pacific Northwest. And then it's a parade of all of these systems continuing to lash out on the West Coast. Meanwhile, today we're watching closely the southern plains into the mid-Mississippi Valley. There is a slight risk for severe storms, which could include damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes as we go through the day. But in addition to that severe threat, also watching for the possibility of some flash flooding into northern Louisiana, into southern Arkansas today, where we could see some very heavy rainfall that could result in that very rapid threat for flooding. The good news, though, is as the system transitions to the east of the Mississippi into the Tennessee Valley, we'll see that threat for severe weather taper off as we go into the day tomorrow. Meanwhile, tracking relatively mild conditions as we head into the Northeast over the next couple of days, as that system from the Central Plains moves east to bring rain to the Northeast as we go into the weekend. Chanel, back to you.
All right, Grant, thanks so much. President Biden is condemning Russia's deadly Christmas attack on Ukraine. Ukrainian forces say Russia sent more than 180 drones and missiles into the country early Christmas morning, targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Kyiv confirmed there were casualties, but have so far not said how many. The attack caused power outages across Ukraine, forcing many to celebrate the holiday in darkness. This is the 13th time Russia has targeted Ukraine's energy system. President Volodymyr Zelensky calling the attack, quote, inhumane. And President Joe Biden releasing a statement saying in part, quote, the Ukrainian people deserve to live in peace and safety, and the United States and the international community must continue to stand with Ukraine until it triumphs over Russia's aggression. Israel and Hamas are once again blaming each other for not being able to reach a ceasefire agreement. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accused Hamas of going back on terms that had already been agreed upon. But the militant group says Israel has set new conditions for the ceasefire and hostage release deal. And while both sides say negotiations will continue, so has the fighting. Gaza's health ministry says an Israeli airstrike in central Gaza killed 5 Palestinian journalists outside a hospital just last night. Israel claims it was targeting Hamas militants. Coming up this hour, no arrests made after a taxi cab hits a group of pedestrians outside New York City's iconic Macy's store on Christmas Day. What authorities are saying about the driver just ahead. Plus, President-elect Donald Trump is floating the idea of acquiring new territories when he assumes office in just a few short weeks. We'll explain just ahead. Welcome back. 6 people are injured after a taxi cab jumped a curb and hit pedestrians in New York City's Herald Square on the busy Christmas day. CBS New York reporter Alicia Reed has more on this story.
Witnesses spring into action to help victims stuck under a taxi that jumped the curb in Herald Square.
When we got up and ripped the fender off, I thought, and I think a couple people thought, it was just a little boy that was there.
Onlookers quickly realized a woman believed to be the boy's mother was also under the carriage. Witnesses say they're visiting from Australia.
That's horrible.
She was coherent. She was talking to her son, smiling, trying to kind of help keep him calm.
Police say this taxi was traveling northbound on 6th Avenue when the 58-year-old driver suffered a medical episode and veered onto the sidewalk in an area designed for heavy foot traffic.
My prayers are to the victims, and hopefully the cab driver will make it as well.
Police say the driver is being evaluated at the hospital. Of the 6 people who were struck, the 9-year-old boy suffered a cut on his right thigh. A 41-year-old woman had a head injury, and a 49-year-old woman a leg injury. All 3 were taken to nearby hospitals, while the remaining 3 victims refused medical attention, including Ryan Tucker's wife.
My wife got hit kind of up on her back shoulder, sent her spinning. She didn't knock her to the ground, made sure she was okay, and then noticed that the car had come up, hit, I think, the building or hit the post. I'm not even sure what it hit.
Police are canvassing the area for any video evidence as they try to determine the cause of the crash. The Good Samaritan says that young boy told him this was the worst holiday ever. At Herald Square, Alicia Reed, CBS News, New York.
Well, we're just weeks away now from Donald Trump's inauguration, and the president-elect is already laying out plans for what he wants to do once he assumes office. Yesterday, Trump making several posts about foreign policy proposal, including a lengthy post where he implied he would be interested in gaining control of Greenland, the Panama Canal, and Canada. Trump also criticized President Biden's decision to commute the sentences of nearly all inmates on the federal government's death row. He says he will direct the Justice Department to vigorously pursue the death penalty once he's in office. CBS News political reporter Torian Small joins us now to discuss all of this. First things first, let's start with Trump talking about potentially gaining control of Greenland, the Panama Canal, and Canada. I mean, is he serious about this, and how would this actually happen?
Chanel, it's kind of hard to gauge whether or not the president is serious about acquiring those sovereign places, especially considering he's using Truth Social, where he's also in between these statements posting memes and AI-generated images. But I will say toward the Panama Canal, this is an act that would take some extraordinary measures, including new bilateral treaties that would rescind what was signed into law under President Carter in the 1970s. As it relates to Canada, it's more poking the bear there because Donald Trump has been pretty public about his disagreements with Trudeau. And then as it relates to Greenland, this is obviously a situation where the U.S. has flirted before with purchasing of that island. The island's prime minister said that Greenland is not for sale. But I do also want to make note that the U.S. does have a military base operating out of it. So strategically, it makes sense. But as of now, it's hard to gauge whether or not the president is in true serious about his intent to purchase or acquire those land. I do want to say, though, this is the man that coveted the art of the deal. This more aggressive style of saying that the U.S. should expand its territory appears to be telegraphing a need for the president to address the U.S. trade policy on the global scale. So it's likely that he'll use this as a negotiating tactic when it comes to more bilateral trade agreements with these places versus an actual intent for the U.S. to acquire through, like I said, treaties or through more forceful measures, takeovers of these sovereign places.
Okay, interesting. Good context there, Torian. Trump also said that he plans to name Kevin Cabrera as the ambassador to Panama. Tell us a bit more about Cabrera and the message this appointment might send.
Well, the through line here is loyalty is rewarded under a Trump administration. This is a man, Cabrera, who won his commissioner seat in Miami-Dade because he was a staunch Trump supporter. He received this endorsement and won cleanly his race there. He also was a executive director of the Florida chapter of the America First policy. This is a think tank that is closely aligned with Donald Trump. And he was also a state director for his 2020 2020 re-election bid. So a lot of characters that we're seeing being poached and appointed to these positions in the Trump administration don't have a lot of things in common. The through line, though, appears to be loyalty to the incoming president.
Okay, Taurine Small, thank you. The holiday season can be make or break for mom and pop toy shops. They risk getting caught in the crosshairs of a trade war if President-elect Donald Trump makes good on his threat to slap big tariffs on China. Nearly 80% of toys sold here in the U.S. are made there, this according to the industry group Toy Association. Money Watch's Kelly O'Grady reports on the impact tariffs could have on your wallet and your children's toy box.
Yeah, this is made in China. This is made in China. This is made in China. One of my favorites.
Jennifer Bergman is the owner of West Side Kids, an independent New York City toy store founded by her mother over 40 years ago.
People that used to shop here as children are now shopping for their children.
Large retailers like Amazon already dominate the U.S. toy market. With that size, they could likely absorb some of a tariff on China. Small businesses like West Side Kids can't.
Where do most of the products in your store come from?
China.
And kind of what percentage?
90%, I'd say.
And so if there was a tariff, would prices go up for consumers?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How quickly?
Probably instantly.
Bergman admitted she would have to pass the cost of those import taxes onto shoppers.
I love this store.
If prices were to go up, would that force you to shop somewhere else?
Yeah, it would be hard.
As more customers turn to cheaper online outlets, small toy stores are a vanishing business, along with the in-store experience.
We're a toy store. It's a magical place to bring a child.
So, Henry, what are you looking for today in the toy store?
I might get that.
With higher costs and slowing sales, Jennifer Bergman worries a potential tariff on toys made in China could put her out of business.
If you were to close, what would that mean?
Well, it would be heartbreaking. It would be a real loss for the community. I can't really imagine not being here.
President-elect Trump may use these tariffs as a negotiating tool, as well as a push to bring manufacturing to the states. But these smaller businesses are worried domestic production does not happen overnight. Kelly O'Grady, CBS News, New York.
President Biden celebrated the holidays with a bill signing blitz on Christmas Eve. He is now on his way to the U.S. Virgin Islands to spend time with his family the week leading up to New Year's. But before leaving, the president was busy able to sign 50 bills into law, including one that formally makes the bald eagle the country's official bird. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland joins us now with more on all of this. Scott, good to see you. So what are some of the other pieces of legislation that Biden signed on Christmas Eve?
This whole range of things that is now law, starting with bald eagles and concluding with a hazing bill that many people, many activists have been pushing forward to address college hazing. The anti-hazing law signed by President Biden would require schools to report annually incidents of hazing on their campuses. Federal law already requires schools to report safety issues, safety incidents on campuses. That now expands to include hazing. You also see at the bottom of your screen the No Corruption Act. That's actually addressed at members of Congress to deny members of Congress who are convicted of public corruption issues, bribery, fraud, from collecting federal retirement benefits. That doesn't come at a moment of trivial nature. It doesn't come in a vacuum, Chanel. It comes in the same year we saw members of Congress either convicted of or plead guilty to corruption issues. Bob Menendez, the New Jersey senator, convicted at trial. George Santos, the former New York congressman, pleaded guilty to face sentencing in February. Not a trivial moment for that issue. But also, we saw Paris Hilton lobbying Congress in recent weeks, trying to get through a law that President Biden signed, among the others, that would crack down on abuse of young people in residential treatment facilities. Wide range of laws, but this is typical at the end of a Congress, the end of a presidency, when they're finishing up old business.
And Scott, we also saw President Biden grant clemency to some federal inmates earlier this week. Say more about that.
Yeah, that's firing up the talk radio circuit this holiday week. 37 of 40 men on federal death row have had their sentences shifted to life in prison instead of the death penalty. Donald Trump's already picked up on that, arguing that President Biden is going soft on crime or sending a message that is not of deterrence by doing so. The president has said that this is a shift from a policy of death penalty to a policy of life imprisonment to show the next administration what priorities should be. But to be clear, this is 37 out of 40, Chanel. 3 people will remain on federal death row, including the mass shooter from South Carolina, from the church, from Pittsburgh, from the synagogue, and the Boston Marathon bomber. Look for that to be an issue President-elect Trump picks up on before he takes office as something he argues is a misstep by President Biden.
All right. And we also know President Biden has now less than 2 weeks to make a decision on the deal between Japan's Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel. So what do we know about where he stands on this issue today?
An odd issue of parallel between President-elect Trump and President Biden. Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel, that merger has caused any amount of controversy in steelmaking communities. Think about Western Pennsylvania, Southeast Ohio, areas in which Democrats and Republicans have been fighting some pretty vicious battles to court voters. The CFIUS agency, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, came back with a mixed bag of results as it analyzed the national security impacts of a Japanese steelmaker taking over a U.S. steel company, a legendary U.S. steel company. President Biden could be the ultimate arbiter here, whether to stop this merger or whether to allow it to go through. There are arguments that the Japanese are well-resourced, could breathe some new life into those U.S. steel mills. There's also the argument that that is giving a foreign country too much power over a critical U.S. industry. We wait for that decision in the 11th hour of this Biden administration.
Time is ticking. Okay, Scott McFarland, thank you. Coming up throughout the afternoon here on CBS News 24/7, cat owners, listen up. A popular pet food brand is now recalling some items over concerns of bird flu contamination. Details on this just ahead. Plus, just because the end-of-the-year holidays are behind us doesn't mean the shopping deals are over. We've got some post-holiday tips and tricks next. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. I'm Chanel Call, and here's a look at today's top stories we're following right now. A pet food company is voluntarily recalling some of its products after the death of an indoor house cat in Oregon. Authorities say the cat died after eating pet food that tested positive for bird flu. Northwest Naturals says it's now pulling 2-pound bags of its feline turkey recipe raw frozen food that was sold nationwide. The man accused of attempting to assassinate President-elect Donald Trump near his Florida golf course will not stand trial until September next year. Ryan Root's trial will begin on September 8, 2025, instead of February 10th. Root's attorneys asked the judge to delay the trial, saying they needed more time to review the evidence and to decide whether to launch an insanity defense. Ruth has pleaded not guilty to charges of attempted assassination, assaulting an officer, and 3 firearm counts. Well, the Christmas holiday shopping season has now wrapped up, but that doesn't mean there aren't more deals waiting to be unpackaged before the year ends. Millions of Americans are expected to be online shopping during their time off between Christmas and New Year's. In several stores, clearance products will be hitting shelves, particularly holiday-themed items, so shoppers can save ahead of next year's holiday. Jordan Hallman joins us now with some more potential shopping deals. She's a business reporter for the New York Times that covers the retail industry. Great to see you again, Jordan. Thanks for being with us. Talk to us about what some of these categories are that will see the best in-store and online deals this week.
So you are exactly right when it comes to that holiday decor. Get that now, like all of those ornaments and the pillows and all of that kind of stuff. But the other things that we're seeing is apparel is discounted, particularly those winter items, because the further we get closer to spring, obviously retailers want to get those off the shelves. A lot of like soaps and lotion companies, they're also offering discounts. The reality is here, yes, a lot of the deals were going up until December 25th, but they know we're still shopping. And so you'll see 20 to 50 to even 60% discounts on some items. So just search online and walk into stores and you'll probably see a deal.
Okay, great to hear. Do we have any data points right now on our shopping habits this year? And what might that signal about the economy right now?
Yeah, we actually got some fresh data out today from MasterCard Spending Pulse showing what holiday sales look like this season. So it was up 3.8%, which was faster than they expected going into the season. So all the underpinnings of the economy look strong. You know, that spending was supported by a strong labor market. It was supported by people's confidence that they could purchase more items than expected, especially when it comes to items for themselves. That's always a good indicator that the retail industry uses to see how customers are just feeling about their wallets.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I wonder if we have some information on what people were spending more on this year, because I think you said 3% up year over year.
Yeah, 3.8%. So one of the fastest growing categories in general was online shopping. That's not really surprising there. But when you look at apparel, online shopping for the clothes was way higher than in-store apparel. Then other strong categories were jewelry and electronics, up about like 4 and 3% respectively.
All right, good to know. Jordan Hallman, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
And while some of you are shopping for more items, others are among the thousands returning unwanted gifts. According to the National Retail Federation, return rates are expected to increase by 17% around the holidays. CBS New York's Derek Waller has more on what you need to know ahead of bringing back those items. Derek?
And good morning from outside the Macy's flagship here in New York City. And if you're planning to hit the stores today and make some returns, you're going to have a lot of company. And you also need to know about their return policy. Make sure you're studying up on that because a lot of stores have holiday-specific return windows. For example, at Best Buy, they're allowing customers who bought things in November and December to return them unused, undamaged up until January 14th. Apple has a similar policy, but their deadline's a little sooner. Their deadline is actually January 8th. It's also worth noting if you did a lot of shopping online, want to make those returns online, then you need to know that more stores are actually recharging people to return those items if they want to ship them back. One logistics company actually says that for every $100 item that's returned online, retailers are spending $32 to restock and resell them. So now they're passing that on to you. Stores like Abercrombie, J. Crew, and Saks Fifth Avenue now charging people. If you want to avoid that fee, though, there's a simple answer here. You can actually return it to a physical store. Happy holidays from Midtown in New York City. Derek Waller, CBS News, New York.
Shadow's story began a lot like yours, Sonic. But where you found family and friends, Shadow found only pain and loss.
Paramount's Sonic the Hedgehog 3 led Christmas Eve box office sales, taking in $7.5 million. It was closely followed by Mufasa, The Lion King, which roared into theaters, making just over $7 million. This is heading into what's expected to be a big holiday weekend. Nosferatu is back on the big screen after more than 100 years. The remake of the 1922 silent film is making its big debut this week, along with, of course, the Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown, starring Timothée Chalamet. And the new Nicole Kidman thriller, Baby Girl, which centers on a forbidden workplace affair. It's been 20 years since a massive tsunami took the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in Southeast Asia. We'll look at how their memories are being honored and how the impact of the natural disaster is still being felt today. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7. This Christmas holiday, we have the story of 4 leaders from 4 different churches in West Texas who picked a novel way to preach tolerance and acceptance. CBS's Jason Allen reports on the power of not just walking in another man's shoes, but preaching from his pulpit.
Anyone walking into this Mexican restaurant in Midland, Texas, probably wouldn't give a second glance to the 4 guys at a corner table laughing over their enchiladas. But this lunch meetup wouldn't be found on everyone's menu around here.
My great-grandfather was pastor for a long time, and he would be horrified at this partnership. He would be horrified.
Darren Wood is a Baptist pastor, and Steve Brooks, Alan Stanglin, and Steve Shore are pastors too, but not Baptists, leading to some eternal differences of opinion.
They're the only ones going to heaven.
Now, wait, I've heard that about the Baptists.
I've heard that all of my life.
Yeah, we've all claimed that at one point in time, right?
65% of people here in Midland County regularly go to church, but not the same church. In fact, there are as many as 45 different religious traditions represented here, from Protestant to Catholic to Hindu to Muslim. A few years ago, the newest leader of one of those West Texas churches was Stanglin at the Church of Christ. He was curious about finding ways his church community could do more for the Midland community. So he put in a call to a Presbyterian.
So is it okay if our whole church comes to your church? And so...
Wait, you went right away from lunch to let's have our whole church come over to the Presbyterian church?
You might ask Steve, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how it happened.
In those post-pandemic years, the friendship grew to 4. And then this fall, during an election season where they saw a divide in their city and the country, an idea developed to reach across their own major denominational lines.
Who made that suggestion to switch pulpits, and did anybody hesitate?
I
think we all hesitated.
I don't know. I don't know who.
We believe that the Word...
Denominations have built their foundations over centuries, with leaders taking great care not to undermine a church's beliefs.
I was a little worried, maybe, not because I didn't trust Alan, but because we'd never tried this before. This was a grand and beautiful experiment.
On a Sunday morning in November,
would y'all please help me give Pastor Darren a warm welcome?
The Baptist preached to Presbyterians. The Church of Christ pastor gave his first sermon to the First Baptist.
I have spent all of my preaching life trying to make sure we get out on time to beat the Baptist. And now I'm with the Baptist.
We've got a cross in our church, too.
And if there was grumbling or griping from the pews, not a single pastor said they heard a word of it.
What came to me is people are sick and tired of division. Unity takes relationship. It takes Mexican food, right? Right? It does. Sitting down and talking to each other, and if people are willing to do that, it will happen.
This is an opportunity to...
Maybe then, a Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, and Church of Christ pastor can go into a restaurant together, and it won't be a joke anymore.
Wonderful. Thank you.
For Eye on America, Jason Allen in Midland, Texas.
20 years ago today, one of the worst natural disasters ever occurred in the Indian Ocean. A massive tsunami killed hundreds of thousands of people and displaced about 10 million people across a dozen countries, including Sri Lanka, Thailand, Indonesia, and India. The underground earthquake, which triggered the wave, was a 9.1 magnitude, making it the third largest ever recorded. Jonathan Hadd, the Southeast Asia correspondent from our partners at the BBC, has more.
The chilling wail of the warning sirens this morning in Banda Aceh in northern Indonesia, marking the moment when this city was almost completely wiped out by the biggest tsunami of modern times. A frightening reminder for survivors, yet also a reassurance that today they are better prepared. In Thailand, they hung photographs of those who died on the tiled memorial, which reaches the height of the wave which smashed into the beaches on that Boxing Day morning. Most of the 151 British victims died here.
I feel dismay. It's been 20 years. I came here every day. Time flies, but it passes slowly in our minds.
Few understood what was happening back then as they watched the lethal torrent of water roar in. There had been no warnings. Thailand, like Sri Lanka, was a long way from the massive earthquake which sent the wave racing across the Indian Ocean.
Over here in this building, well, at the moment...
For those of us reporting the tsunami, it was like nothing we had experienced before. Arriving on Phi Phi Island in Thailand, I watched them pull body after body, most of them tourists still in their colourful beachwear, from under the rubble. 1,300 had died on this small island in a matter of minutes. The destruction I witnessed in Indonesia was on an almost unimaginable scale. Scenes of death and grief which remain burnt into my memory. Yet the survivors rebuilt and recovered, sometimes from communities of which only fragments remained, leaving here and there monuments to that dreadful day, and carrying the hard lessons learnt on what to do should they hear the sirens, part of a now greatly improved warning system, go off.
Jonathan Head, thank you. An Ohio inmate suspected of killing a corrections officer is now at a different state facility. Officials say Andrew Lansing died after an inmate assault yesterday morning at Ross Correctional Institution. The department says he was a friendly, outgoing officer who treated everyone with respect and was always a professional. It's unclear what led to the alleged assault. Still ahead this hour, Christmas wish come true. How a beloved dog missing for 9 days found its way back home just in time for the holidays. Plus, think you have what it takes to play the role of Santa? Well, we'll take you to Santa school and show you the true training that goes beyond just putting on that red suit. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7.
Jolie, 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 I'm warning you, don't come for my man.
This was really good. Beyonce spent Christmas Day line dancing to Texas Hold'em with her daughter, Blue Ivy. Queen Bee headlined the Netflix halftime show during the Ravens-Texans game in her hometown of Houston. She was also joined by Shabuzi and Post Malone while performing hits from Cowboy Carter. The 13-minute show was Beyonce's first time performing songs live from her 8th studio album. And Christmas magic was definitely in the air this week for the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs beating the Steelers 29-10 on Wednesday, securing their spot as the #1 seed in the AFC. And Ted Nguyen joins us now to speak more about this. He is an NFL staff writer for The Athletic. Hey, good morning. Happy holidays. Thanks so much for being with us, Ted.
Good morning. Happy holidays, and thanks for having me on.
So a lot of action to talk about. The Baltimore Ravens, of course, defeating the Houston Texans in this wide victory of 31-2. So let's start with the Ravens here. Lamar Jackson had this record-breaking night. Talk more about that and what's next for the team.
Yeah, ever since his breakout performance in 2019, this was a record that was always going to be his, and 6,110 yards later, he has a record. And the amazing thing about Lamar Jackson is it never looks like he's really sprinting. On that 48-yard run, he clocked in 21.25 miles per hour. And after the game, he said he was jogging. It just kind of shows you how disciplined you have to be defensively and the stress he puts on defenses. And for this team, their defense was kind of leaky early on in the season. But ever since moving Kyle Hamilton to free safety full time, they've really improved. And this is one of the best offenses, most efficient offenses we've seen of all time. So this is a team that's ready to compete for a championship.
All right, turning now to the Chiefs win and top AFC spot. No team, we should mention, has ever won 3 consecutive Super Bowls. Could these guys be the first?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in the beginning of the season, it looked a little shaky because no team has ever won 11 games by 1 possession, except for the Chiefs. And they did it. You know, when teams win by only 1 possession, there's a little bit of a luck factor. But the Chiefs have since kind of corrected some of their issues. They've moved left guard Joe Thuney to left tackle. He's played really well there. They're getting Marquise Brown back. Xavier Worthy is starting to come on. So all of a sudden, their offense looks like a formidable unit. Their defense is holding teams to only 18 points per game, which is top in the NFL. So things are starting to round up, and it looks like the Chiefs are ready for a 3-peat run.
All right, Ted Nguyen, thanks so much. Happy holidays.
Thanks for having me on.
It was a Christmas miracle for a family in Jacksonville, Florida, who got the best surprise on their doorbell camera. Take a look. Their 4-year-old German Shepherd, Athena, who'd been missing for 9 days, finally found her way home and started ringing the doorbell at around 2:30 in the morning on Christmas Eve. Mom said she tried to let the dog in without waking up her 4 kids, but that, of course, didn't happen. Everyone woke up to celebrate. Great to see. And the art of playing Santa Claus goes much deeper than donning that red suit. We found a jolly but serious St. Nick who puts future Santas to the test with a rigorous training program. Here's CBS's Skylar Henry.
If the saying, seeing is believing, means anything at Christmas, then Rick Rosenthal is a true believer.
What makes a good Santa?
The very first thing is your heart. You have to like yourself.
You have to be understood
and logical to be believable.
Twice a year, Rosenthal, or Santa Rick as he likes to be called, is Dean of Students at the Northern Lights Santa Academy in Atlanta. Between 100 and 150 student Santas and Mrs. Clauses from as far away as England and Germany enroll each session. And these aren't your typical mall Santas.
I'm working on becoming a professional Christmas entertainer, but not just an extraordinary Christmas entertainer.
In the near decade since Rosenthal founded it, Northern Lights has grown to the largest Santa school in the Southeast.
When you have a professionally trained and educated Christmas performer, they look different. They have real Santa suits, not costumes. So education is really important in every field.
The training includes hair care, with tips on how to keep Santa's beard snowy white, a course on magic tricks, and a workshop on inclusivity for children with disabilities.
Why go to such great lengths to put this much energy into it?
Christmas is a season, even though it falls on the 24th and 25th, it lasts for weeks or months, and people change, and it brings out the best on them.
And that's Rosenthal's goal, helping to bring the true meaning of the holiday season out of new students and those who already know the way of the claws. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Atlanta.
Oh, love that so much. CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore is back now with a last look at our national weather forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Chanel. Look, active across most of the country. We've got severe weather in the south, and we've got yet another atmospheric river moving into the Pacific Northwest, and then we've got several more on the way. But we are tracking that threat for severe weather today. It is beginning to take shape right now. It's going to be moving through eastern Texas and then into portions of Louisiana later on this afternoon. So that's where we're really going to be keeping a close eye on, though, that threat for severe weather. We're talking multiple threats here, from not just damaging winds, but the threat for hail and even some tornadoes. Yes, you can even get that severe threat through the winter months. Here's the radar right now. This is a loop over the last few hours. You can see how those storms are beginning to bubble up in the Dallas metro. Now, we do have the slight risk for severe weather from eastern Texas, really from Houston up to Texas, into the northwestern part of Louisiana and even southern Arkansas later on this afternoon into the evening. Got the trifecta: damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes. All cannot be ruled out. But it's not just that severe threat, but also that threat for flash flooding. You've got a slight risk for that flash flooding anywhere from those same areas across eastern Texas, Louisiana, even into portions of northwestern Mississippi, where you could get a lot of rainfall in a short period of time that may result in that flooding. The good news, though, is as that system pulls up to the north and east into the mid-Mississippi Valley up into Kentucky and the Ohio Valley, the threat for severe weather will begin to taper off. All this is going on. We've also got that atmospheric river pumping in all of that Pacific moisture into the west coast. Look at the radar here. You've got high elevation snow, that mountain snow, along with very heavy rainfall there in the lower elevation. So several rounds of these storm systems battering the coast. You've got wind speeds that could be gusting up to 80 miles per hour. You got high surf along with the heavy rain, and some places in the mountains could see 1 to 2 feet of snow. These rounds of systems will persist all the way through the weekend into early next week. The rest of the country, well, relatively dry and seasonable across the desert Southwest and across the mid portion of the country. Mild as well, with temperatures in Sioux Falls around 38 degrees this afternoon. Chanel, back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you. And coming up throughout the afternoon here on CBS News 24/7, we'll keep an eye on those storms rolling into the south. Plus, we'll follow the latest out of Kazakhstan as investigators there search for answers in the deadly plane crash. You're watching CBS News 24/7.